This is my passion, Frank, is float fishing. I've done this for 60 years and I just love it. If I had to just do one method for the rest of my life, I'd be a float fisherman. Okay, so these are wagglers. These are all what they call wagglers, and you can find out how to make them again on Fishing with Den. So this I only made a couple of days ago, and that is a pelican quill that I found down at the Murray mouth. So I've just painted it up in Punchmaster colours, nice visible top, and just a ring at the bottom.
And what do you make the ring out of?
That's out of a brass safety clip you get from...
a safety pin?
Yeah, safety pin, yeah.
It's got to be brass, though, otherwise it corrodes.
Yeah, rust, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then I do a bit of whipping, a little bit of camo. That's just... But I've been to the doctor about it.
Have you?
Yeah. I said to the doctor, I said, I'm having real trouble. I keep making these floats. I lose one and make 4. He said, there's no cure.
Okay.
So
it's terminal.
Terminal.
Terminal tackle?
Yes.
Sorry.
Nice.
Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is just a piece of reed. The reeds, what's that reed you get with a fluffy top?
Phragmites.
Yeah, that one. So that's just a piece of fat with
Phragmites.
with a bit of bamboo skewer stuck up its behind, again with a little ring. Nice visible top. This is a bodied waggler. Okay,
so called because it's got a fat bit down the bottom.
It's got a body. Yep. Oops.
That's all right.
So that's balsa. That's just a bamboo skewer. Little bit of whipping, bit of camo. And this one, it's the same thing exactly. I've just got a yellow top because this is something I'll explain with float fishing. You want to, when you fish with a float, you want to be in the same place in the water all the time. And when you're just fishing out there, it's just a big expanse of water. How are you going to find that out? So what I do, every lake has got shadows. So if you look over that side, Frank, you're on the water, you'll see the shadow of the trees.
Yep.
They never move. Or it's a reflection actually, not a shadow. Shadows of trees and stuff, and as I said, they move with the sun, but that never moves. So what I'll do is I'll pick out a feature in the reflection, and I'll fish to that feature. It might be a bit where 2 trees come down. I've got a little bit of a valley, so I'll fish in there, and I keep going there all the time. And then I put my ground bait in there, and I stay there because I'm feeding the fish to get them to come to me. I don't want to chase them.
These are the Dinsmore shot, the soft shot that are reusable, very environmentally friendly, I suppose, and also the size hook that Doug likes to use. And he's now going to go through how to rig a waggler float.
So I've selected this float because I'm not going to fish like massively way out, probably only about 15 metres. So this is a bodied waggler with the balsa body and just a skewer tip, and I can see red quite well. If it was in dark shadow, I'd put a yellow one on. But so basically all I do, I'm going to just show you.
Can I just go back a step there? So just go through the colours again. So red under sunny conditions, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it depends if you're colourblind or not too.
Yeah.
So you can have like red like that, or you can have like yellow or green. A sort of a vivid green can be quite good. Or if you're fishing against a light background, that could be black.
Yes.
It depends. I'm going to fish out in the reflection there, so red's going to be good for me today.
And you've also, you haven't got one here to show us, but you've actually made some wagglers with a much thicker red tip at the top.
Yeah, I made them especially for you, Frank.
And I appreciate it, Doug, I've got to say.
Because you can't see
because that thing is probably about 2 mil wide, and when it's 15-20 metres out, There's no, oh, that was a
That
line
was
bite.
a line bite.
That was a line bite.
Yep.
On the feeder.
Theory proved.
There we go. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the fatter tip and the ones that you've done are about 4 or 5 mil. I can see them.
Yeah, I know.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Right. So what are we going to do next?
Okay.
We thread it on.
So yeah, you need to know roughly what the depth of the water in there. It's about 6 foot. So what I'll do now, I'll just leave that loose, and I'm going to put a hook. When I'm fishing with a float, I use a 10 hook or a 12 hook. I don't normally go any bigger.
Why is that?
Because it's just a lot more subtle method. And it's just what I feel comfortable with.
Well, I have to say that when you see the average Joe fishing in freshwater in Australia, or certainly in South Australia, say in the Murray or a place like this, I see hooks that are way too big. I've seen 2.0 hooks.
Yeah.
And the first thing I think is, how the hell is the average fish going to swallow that? And the answer is it isn't. And okay, big carp have got big mouths, but big carp don't come along every 5 minutes. So a small hook does make sense. I've got to say, I don't go as small as a 12. The smallest I do is about an 8. But yeah, I get it.
George, another one of George's sayings is, you can catch a big fish on a small hook, but you can't catch a small fish on a big hook.
Wise man, that George.
He was smashing. He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of his sayings, and it's so true. I've caught carp up to, what would you say, 9 kilos on a 12 hook and
Yeah.
6 pound line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to estimate how deep it is here. Okay. So what I'll do, I'm going to undershot the float.
What is that? What does shotting the float mean, Doug?
Well, I put weight around the float so that when the weight is correct, that will sit up in the water, and there's the water like that. So the water level's like that. If it's shotted correctly, you just see the tip.
Right, and if it's undershotted, how much would I see?
That'd lie
Lie
like
flat?
that, or it'll be that far away, and that's okay sometimes. That's okay to do that, but the more sensitive it is, everything's in balance. So,
Yeah, so if you've only got the tip sticking out of the water, it's going to take very, very little resistance to pull it under.
yeah,
That's basically what we're saying, isn't it?
yeah. So my ultimate aim is to get the hook just sitting on the bottom.
Right.
In this lake, there's catfish, there's one perch that Frank caught last time, and there's carp, big carp. So they're all bottom feeders except the perch. So catfish and carp are bottom feeders. So I want my bait on the bottom. So it's good. And in the diagram you'll see the bait, the line comes down. Then there's a couple of maybe 50 mil on the bottom.
Right.
So you may think, how can I tell that? So I'm going to show you now. Right, so I'm going to estimate the depth of the water, and I'm going to put 2 little shot on that won't even cock this.
Cock means make it stand upright?
Yeah, it's not what that other thing.
No,
yeah,
that's all right.
like that.
Yep.
So that's, so I'm just going to put them on loosely. Okay. I've got to find a little split. Like that. And then on the bottom, I'm going to use a plumb bob. Now, plumb bob, that's just a little bomb with a swivel on, and on the bottom is a bit of cork.
Right.
That's as simple as that. Costs you nothing to make. So what I do, I just put the hook through the eye of the swivel, come down, and put the hook in the bit of cork. Okay. So I've got that is overweighted for that.
Yeah.
For that float. So I know that that's too short, so that's going to go under when I lob it out.
All right, demo?
All right, demo. I'm just going to do an underhand one here, Frank. disappeared.
And the float's gone and completely disappeared. Right, okay.
So that means I haven't put enough depth on it, right? So what we do, I normally go up about 150 mil increments, like that, until I get it right.
So what depth have you got now? About 4 feet?
4 foot, what's that, about 1.5 meters?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't use feet, Frank.
No, I'm sorry, we're metric now.
I've been struggling all morning to do millimetres and not feet. Right, so we try it again. You don't have to do all of these bits, Frank. Look at that.
Now, I've just got to try and see it in the water.
Can you see that? Or not? Okay, so I'll take the plumb bob off.
That's called a plumb bob.
Yeah.
And so just basically a bomb sinker with the bottom cut off and a bit of cork glued on.
Yeah, so plumb bob. Everyone's got an uncle plumb bob, haven't they? Or is that silly?
I don't know, I've never heard it.
So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put my shot on. And I'm going to put it on bit by bit till the float cocks. And I've just got the red bit flowing. Showing, not open.
So more shot going on.
Yeah.
And what sort of size shot are you using?
I'm using that swan shot. That's the biggest ones in the Dinsmore packet, so that's swan shot.
And you can see, if you look very closely, you can see like a depression in the top of that shot that you can get your fingernail into to open it.
Yeah, and while you're there, Frank, see that fingernail? That's especially long for doing just that. You know, like
that's amazing.
Guitarists have a fingernail for plucking. That one's for my shot. That's true. That is true. That's no bullshit.
So it's a shot plucker.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll put that on. I'm just squeezing it up with my finger at this time.
Right. So swan shot, it would be one of the larger ones, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And the other thing is you must keep all your shot
close.
Yeah, close, and the bulk of it below the float.
Right.
You don't want it above, and you don't want it down your line, strung out like washing on a line. So you keep it like that. Otherwise, these things, when you cast out, they cartwheel.
Yeah.
That won't. That'll go out like a bullet.
Right.
Like that. Yeah. So I'll lob this in and see how my weight's going. Okay, so I'm just going to cast this out. Can you see that?
Yep.
So it's a little bit undershotted.
So
I just need
not quite enough weight on it.
Yeah, so I'm going to put one more little weight on it. I'll do that now, and then it should go down to the red bit.
And it seems like a bit of mucking around to get it right. But once you've got it right, you can fish all day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So persevere.
Yeah.
So the extra shot's on.
The extra shot. So it may not be enough yet.
Okay, it's back in.
That is perfect.
Someone turn that car alarm off.
So that's just how I want it to sit, Frank. Like that. And I know that's dead in line on the bottom. That's right on the bottom.
Right, so pretty well perfectly weighted.
Yeah. We've got that all
it's all sorted
nicely.
Yep.
What I'm going to do now is this is called a telltale shot, and you'll see it on the diagram. You can hardly see that. It's a tiny little shot. Yeah. And all that does, it sits on the bottom. It doesn't affect where the float's sitting in the water, but it just gives, if there's a little bit of wind, it just gives a little bit of drag.
Yeah.
And it gets the bait down to the bottom. So, but that won't affect that.
No.
Because it's plonk on.
No.
So now I'm going to put some bait on. I'll just get rid of that for a minute and I'll explain the bait.
So just,
That is the most sensitive way to fish. If a fish breathes on that or looks at it, it will go. If a fish swims past, you can tell because the float will wave. Yeah, it's so sensitive.
right, so Doug's opened a tin of supermarket corn. That's what he's going to fish and ground bait with. You can see the worm container from the feeder rig alongside. And just a word, we get so tired of seeing empty sweet corn tins and worm containers where we go fishing. If you can carry them down there, use them for the day's fishing, take the bloody things out and put them in a bin.
Okay, so I'm going to be fishing with bread punch today, and this is where I get my nickname, Punch Master. My cousin in England nicknamed me that. I don't know
Right.
why, I'm not a master at anything. This is what I'm going to be fishing with today.
What is that?
That is a fantastic bait, okay?
Yeah, but what is it?
That can catch me 50 fish, that.
Okay.
So that's cheap bread from
Yeah.
Woolies, right? Cheapest bread you can get, 2 slices with the crust cut off. You stick it in the microwave for 12-15 seconds, and then when it comes out, it's still hot and steamy, rolling pin. Okay?
There you
And
go.
that's like rubber.
So if
but
you
it's bread.
ever wanted to know how to prepare your bread for bait,
Punch.
for using a punch, that's
Yeah.
how you do it.
So that's punch bread, right? I can catch, honestly, I can catch 50 odd fish on
One
two
slice,
slices.
two
slices of bread.
2 slices of bread.
Yeah, being a bit of a tight ass, that suits me. So these are my punches. And they're all made out of old bullet casings, right?
You've got different
Different sizes, like that one, big end, little end, big end. That one, if on my feeder, I can use that on my feeder.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what they are. So that end is what I like here. It's so simple. If your mum makes biscuits, she'll show you how to do this. So all you do is you do that. I've got a piece of bread in there. I'll get the hook, stick it in there, and believe it or not, I'll be able to cast it out 4 or 5 times because it's sort of rubbery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is a totally different approach to getting a bit of bread out of the packet,
Yeah.
and just pinching a bit out and squeezing it on your hook.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is called punch.
And the fish eat it.
Oh, they do.
I mean, honestly, I'm not that turned on by the appeal of that, but they eat it.
I used one of these things to
close-up on the
keep it
hook.
in.
Try not to blur it. Yes,
And I keep the bread in there with the lid on
yes.
and in the shade so it don't dry out. Okay.
that which would definitely be a problem, particularly in the warmer weather, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So with a bread, I can use bread. I can use corn, as we've said before. Cheapest place in Australia to buy sweet corn in a tin, Aldi, $100. Okay. So sometimes I use bread, sometimes I use corn, sometimes I use worms. I quite often use a combination of each. So what I like to do when I start, if I don't know what the fish are feeding on, I put a bit of bread like that, and I'll also put a bit of corn. So that's a bread corn cocktail. Okay, and then if I get a bite, I see what they've nibbled at. Then I may take the other stuff off. So if they're going for the corn, I might take the bread off.
Yep.
Or if they're going for the bread, I might take the corn off.
Yep.
So that's a cocktail bait.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And gents are a good, a lot of the match guys use gents, but I don't use them because they're rather expensive.
And they're fiddly.
Yeah, and she won't let me put rotten chicken in the shed and breed them myself.
No.
That's my boss.
Yeah, your boss.
She won't let me do that.
I got one of them too, Doug.
Yeah, she wouldn't let you do that either.
She
would
wouldn't.
No.
She turned her nose up at the worm farm.
Yeah. So it's as simple as that. So now when I cast out, The reason I've got the rod pointing at the water is again for the same reason. I don't want the wind to interfere, and when you're fishing with a float, you must get your line under the water. So I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to cast out. I'm not going to go out too far. For demonstration purposes. I've cast out, floats come to the top. I've dipped the rod tip under the water. Okay. So I've overcast where I want to fish, and then I bring it back 3 or 4 meters, and the float comes up again.
Just get the float.
Yeah. And I'll either have my rod tip under the water or very close to it. There's not a lot of wind today, so with that bit of bait on there, it's taking the float down a bit. The float will do 2 things. It'll either just slide away, well, it'll do 3 things actually. It'll just either slide away, it may go for a walk on the top like that, which is a bite, or if it's a tench or a carp feeding up like that, the float can come up.
And what's that called?
It's called a lift bite.
A lift bite.
Yeah, and they're almost unmissable. If you get a lift bite, the fish has to have it in its mouth, and it's done that.
Yeah.
And then you don't often miss those.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So the important thing about that was that you cast the line out, cast the float out, sorry, and then you sunk the rod tip to put the line in the water so that you reduce any wind drag.
Yeah.
And you whip it to bring the float up.
Yeah. What you can do once you overcast, you bring it back to where you want it, and then if you just put so you wind it back and then put your rod tip under the water and you do that, and that'll sink your line.
Right.
So you just whip it. Yeah, it's all a bit complicated, but
no, not at all.
Used to it.
Yeah. Very good. So the float's out, the bait's out. You know that your bait's on the bottom because you plumbed the depth.
Yeah.
So your bait is exactly where the fish are likely to be feeding, and then with the feeder, of course, you've got feed on the spot, but with the float you have to add the feed or the ground bait or the berley by hand or by catapult.
Yeah, normally by hand because you're not fishing that far out with a float.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just put another 50 mil on that because I want it really on the bottom.
Right.
So what I'll do, I'll cast out again, I'll overcast the distance, I'll bring it back with the rod tip under the water, then if I need to I'll just flick the tip. So you won't see the float here, Frank, because I'm going to go out a bit. So I've gone out beyond where I want to fish, bring it in, rod tip under the water, when the float comes up, give it a flick. And there it's sitting beautiful, look at that. So what I'll do...
Right, so there's the float now, perfectly weighted with the bait on.
Little and often, especially in the winter. So I'm just going to lob that out by hand, underarm, because it's more accurate, and I want that to go around the float. So let's see how good I am. Ready? That's close enough.
Yep, that was within about a foot of the float.
So I would do that this time of the year, maybe once every 15 minutes. Not too much, just a little bit. Yeah, if you overfeed it, they'll come along, eat all the burley, and then get big fat tummies and off they go. And I don't want that, I want them to eat my bait.
Right. Well, I think just to quickly summarise that, Doug, I mean, the hard part is really in the rigging, the shotting and the plumbing. Once you've got the depth and you're feeding the swim, which we talked about before, then it takes care of itself. You don't need to muck around with the float unless, of course, you decide to go further out or closer in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Thanks very much. That's really, I hope, has demystified the idea of float fishing, particularly with wagglers, and there are other types of floats you can use. We won't mention bubble floats.
No, Robbie. Naughty boy.
No, well, I think Robbie might be coming around a bit.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So float fishing, and as Doug said, it's his passion, and I've been fishing with Doug for a couple of years now on and off, and I can see it works.
Yeah,
So give it a go. Thanks, Doug.
No worries. Frank, that was on the float, 6 pound line. Okay. All right. I'm going to put it down now. It's getting heavy. I'm going to weigh it.